Hey, what's up y'all? This is William, the Permaculture Consultant, and today we're going to be doing another Permaculture Q&A, and that's where I answer your Permaculture Q&A questions. If you have a submission for Permaculture Q&A, then leave it down below in the comment section with the hashtag Permaculture Q&A at the beginning of it. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Now, as you can see, it's hot as all get out here in East Texas, but we're still gonna get this filmed and answer your guys' questions. So let's get started. This first one is from Vanessa O'Connor 5000. Hi William, the question isn't directly related to this video, but we're looking for a good scythe and don't know where to start. I believe you said you made yours, or maybe it was another tool. Do you have somewhere you recommend for quality tools? Thanks for sharing all your knowledge and experience with everyone. Alrighty, so this is a question I actually get quite often, is like, where do you get a good scythe from? And I can say that the scythe that I have, it's a Seymour, I don't really like. I don't like the way the Scythe is shaped, and it's also not long enough for me to get good leverage on it to get enough ground pressure. And that was just recently discovered with the latest scything video that I did, like scything that 1/10 of an acre backyard. It's not very easy. It requires a lot of strength to actually get enough ground pressure to get a nice cut on your grass. That also is an American scythe, I should say. That being said, it works just fine whenever you're trying to clear stuff like this, or like your thicker, brushier stuff, or your thicker weeds and stuff like that. It works just fine when you're trying to clear stuff like that. But anything that's thin or wispy or delicate or anything like that, it's not going to do too well, in my experience. Now, I have seen people with Austrian scythes or European style scythes that do absolutely wonderful on very, very short, flimsy grass, like softer grass. So you might want to check one of those guys out. I've heard that scythesupply.com is a good place to go to. I think they make the scythe actually to your height, like they make it to your body dimensions, so which is pretty cool and would solve a large issue that I have with the scythe that I have right now. And also even the antique snaiths that I found at like farm stores or estate sales or anything like that, auctions, they are pretty doggone short as well. So I don't know why the American scythe Scythe is limited to such a short body, but it is. The Austrian scythe seems to be accommodating to like taller people as well, but also accommodating to shorter people as well, because I could imagine that American scythe being cumbersome for somebody who's considerably shorter than I am. So hopefully that helps you. I would check out scythesupply.com. There you go. PA Fish Preacher 6166. William, I recently got a load of chicken manure that is mostly about 1 year old. However, it stinks to high heaven, so to speak. In fact, one neighbor is already whining about it. I've put a good bit of lime on it, but we had some rain a couple of days ago. So my question is, would adding carbon to it calm down the smell, or what else can I do to reduce the stench? So this one is actually a pretty easy one. If you're using a high nitrogen source and the stink is not going away, then you need to add a carbon source. And now in your situation, I would add maybe straw. If you have easy access to it, you're in Pennsylvania, so maybe just find some, as clean as you can find, hay, or any other carbon source would work as well. Even leaves would work. But find some sort of carbon source, and then I would mix it like half and half, like half your aged chicken manure and half the carbon. If the smell doesn't go away, then add more carbon, and also make sure that you keep everything nice and wet. Not like saturated or anything like that, but if you get like a handful, a nice big handful of it and squeeze it, you should have one drop form and fall from that squeeze. So that should be a good barometer for moisture levels, and that should help quite a bit with your stench. Not your stench, but the chicken manure stench. I think the best use of it though would actually be using it in your compost piles. Like use it as your high nitrogen for your compost piles. So hopefully that helps. Chicken manure, honestly, I understand your neighbor's complaint. That stuff is quite funky. All the Tyson and Pilgrim places around here are all picking up manure and chickens right now. So yeah, I understand your neighbor. Hopefully that helps. Alrighty, now this question I get actually pretty often, and it's how to deal with ants in your compost pile. Before I've said, like, you know, try to raise the temperature, add a high nitrogen source to it or something like that, because then they usually typically tend to go away. Another method is to just let it age, and then if you have pretty complete soil, I think the microarthropods and the nematodes and all the predator species in your soil are basically going to eat the ant larvae. That's just a hypothesis, but I actually have an example of an evacuated ant pile in my compost pile. All right, so check this out. This is my compost pile right here. And as you can see, it's kind of dry. It's not dry in the center. I need to add water to it. That's why the tarp is off. Also, I think I might flip it as well, but I'll flip both of them as my 75 hard workout. Check out the vlog. But anyway, here is an ant pile. Try not to create shadow. And as you can see, I'm going to use my bare hands to show you that the ants are gone. You see this? There are no more ants in this compost pile. So what I'm thinking happened was that, like I said, the predators started developing in the compost pile, like the nematodes and the microarthropods and all that, the protozoa, all of them. They started developing in the compost pile, started getting a complete soil food web, and then they started eating, just guessing, they started eating the ant larvae, making them leave or go to a different area. I don't know. I think it's just uninhabitable conditions in the compost pile. Like I've said before, and then again, this is just a theory, you either have ants or you have worms. They're both serving a function. I don't know if you noticed, but those were pretty fine aggregates that the ants had actually created. Those are similar aggregates to what worms are creating. So they're not necessarily, I understand that they are highly annoying, but they're not necessarily the worst things to have in your compost pile. Believe me, ciliates or comma-shaped bacteria, spirochetes or spirilla, those are all far worse things to have in your compost pile than some ants. So maybe just give it some time, let it cool down, let it come to ambient temperature, and see if those ants stick around. Now this one is from 3-4, Permaculture Q&A. Can you talk a bit about honeybees versus native pollinators? I've heard that raising honeybees can displace, outcompete the native pollinators, and overpollination can cause plant stress and ecological imbalance. I've also heard that honeybees will pollinate non-native plants much more prolifically than native pollinators. I've been considering raising honeybees for a while, but have yet to make a decision because I'm not sure if the benefits will outweigh the potential risks. So based on this question and a few questions you've had in the past, I think you might be struggling with analysis paralysis. I would only ask yourself, either do you want to produce honey or not? If you do want to produce honey, then go ahead and get the honeybees. If you don't want to produce honey, then don't worry about it. It's not like your farm or your orchard isn't going to make it or break it based on whether or not you got honeybees. If you're following a diversity of plantings in your garden, if you're not spraying a bunch of toxic chemicals in your orchard and stuff like that, then the native pollinators are going to come. If they don't come this year, then they'll probably get the hint next year, and then the following year they're going to tell their friends about it. So don't worry about having to get bees to pollinate your orchard or your garden or anything like that. One of the benefits of having bees is that they do produce a lot of honey. So if you're looking at it from a preparedness aspect, I would 100% go get some honeybees and get used to handling them and harvesting their honey and taking care of them and stuff like that. Hopefully that narrows it down for you a little bit. And don't feel bad about the analysis paralysis. This is a very common thing when it comes to new homesteaders or new people into permaculture, is that you get stuck on all of the different ways that you are going to basically affect the surrounding areas, which is not a bad thing to ask yourself, but also keep in mind that it's okay to make some mistakes as long as you learn from those mistakes. Nothing you're going to do is going to be permanently damaging the ecosystem. Now, you're probably thinking of 5 to 20 examples of permanent damages to ecosystems right now. And I would say that they're still false. Even those forever chemicals, they will eventually be filtered out and sequestered through just nature, the natural processes of nature, just composting itself. If you don't believe me, check out Chernobyl, where there's fungi growing out there that is actually eating the radiation. Also, it's not always visible or observable by human eyes because we have very, very short lifespans in relation to nature. So it might take nature 100,000 years or it might take it 5,000 years, or it might take it 1,000 years to filter out whatever toxin that we left behind, but the problem will still be resolved, and I highly doubt that you're ever going to make any mistakes that's going to cause thousands of years worth of damage. So, especially whenever it comes to something as beneficial as honeybees, because they are great pollinators, and if it turns out that they imbalance the ecosystem just slightly for a brief period of time, I'm pretty sure that nature will figure out a way to compensate. So, good question, and it brought up a good topic discussion. So, thank you for that. Hopefully that helps. This one is from Austin Trees. Permaculture Q&A. Hey William, I'm in zone 6A at 1300 feet. I have full sun and partial sun areas that I have had trees burn up. Get some leaves, they burn, and then they drop, and then they never come back. They are covered in wood chips, and we don't have droughts where I'm at. I water when we have long stretches of no rain. They have tree tubes 3 foot high to protect them from rabbits, surrounded by trees that have no issues, and I've had trees like pawpaw sit basically dead, and then a year and a half later started growing back after looking like a burnt up stick. I currently have a few apples, a pear, a peach, and a pomegranate that basically young whips to 2-year-old trees that I planted this spring. Do trees like this stay alive from the roots, or should I cut them back and hope for the best? I've also had a few cherry trees at their second year in the ground, and they have been beaten up by the Japanese beetle so much that I don't think they have grown, just struggled and eventually lost their leaves. I bought some milky spore to treat the yard and kill the grubs for next year. I'm hoping that this will put insect netting on them as well. P.S. I'm a truck driver who only has a handful of hours on the weekend where I'm home to do anything, and I have ample amount of trees. I am not relying on these that are struggling. I'm just more worried that I'm wasting time if I get the chance to fix these, or if I should leave them and see. Alrighty, so sorry for stumbling through that comment. But okay, so in your situation, this is where I would employ the Mark Shepard S.T.U.N method, the strategic total utter neglect. If you're having trees, especially in your situation where you have very limited time to manage these trees on the weekends, I would, if they're not gonna make it on their own, then I would just let them die and then replace them the next year. I would be careful that some of the varieties that you've planted, that the rootstock isn't what's growing back. And also I would keep in mind that maybe the over attention or the over care of these trees is actually what's killing them. There's a bunch of different possible factors involved here, but I would employ, in your situation, the strategic total utter neglect. Means you plant them, you give them the best possible situation, and then you just leave them. If they don't make it, you didn't want it anyways because it wasn't very strong. If they do make it, then maybe propagate that one. So hopefully that helps. This is from Dunn OT7HX. I have a bumper crop of watermeal in the pond this year and was wondering what you thought about using it in the garden. Is it a high nitrogen source? Absolutely, I would for sure use it in the garden. In fact, I would use it in your compost pile as actually a high nitrogen source. You could also probably feed it to your chicks or ducks if you wanted to. So if you have one of those, then I would probably give half to the animals and then half to the compost pile. I think sheep can eat it as well. I'm not entirely sure, but that would be something to check out. If you have any animals, then I would first see if they could eat any of it first. And if not, then add it to your compost pile. It's also gonna add a very nice gel layer to your compost pile as well, which takes quite a bit of time typically to develop in your compost. So hopefully that helps. This is from Ranger's Wife 2176. If you put down cardboard, etc. around your tree, how do you get water to it? Just don't have it extend to the drip line. Yeah, so that's a good question. That's why it's important, especially if you're in an arid environment, that's why it's important to put down saturated or wet cardboard around your tree instead of dry cardboard, because the dry cardboard is gonna act as a hydrophobic area. And it's also good to go ahead and water around the tree before putting the cardboard down. So dry cardboard acts kind of hydrophobic. It'll just bead water off and shed it off to the sides. And your wet cardboard is going to soak up any more moisture. You know how like a dry sponge soaks up less water than a wet sponge? Similar concept whenever it comes to your cardboard. So make sure you saturate it first before putting it around your tree, and that's gonna go a long way in making sure that that tree still gets moisture. If you do it right, it shouldn't harm your trees at all. So good question, hopefully that helps. Alrighty, that's it for the permaculture Q&A. If you guys have any questions you'd like to submit, then leave it down below in the comment section with the hashtag permaculture Q&A at the beginning of it. Until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you.